Every now and then, you end up in a hopeless position. Your opponent is sitting behind a wall of 10/10s. They are so far ahead that looking at the board state is so grim it's almost funny. Meanwhile, you have nothing. There are only a handful of cards in all of Magic that'll get you out of this mess, and unfortunately, none of them are in your hand. The game is over in all the ways that matter, and although playing to your outs is always an option, sometimes saving time is more valuable than sticking it out. Good news for you! In these instances, there is always the ability to concede. Rule 104.3a states, a player can concede the game at any time. A player who concedes leaves the game immediately. That player loses the game. This rule is good. Short, simple, reasonable, and lets you shuffle up for another game quickly without hassle. While this is awesome for a one-on-one game of Magic, it can actually end up getting you into hot water in games with multiple players. But why is that? Well, it has to do with the differences between multiplayer and two-player formats of Magic. In a two-player format, as soon as one player loses, the game ends. The other player wins, there is no room to continue playing, and outside of saving time, little incentive to concede. It's intuitive that both players would be returned all of their cards and move on to the next game. In multiplayer, things are not this simple. Even after a player leaves the game, it continues progressing until either one player is left standing or someone achieves an alternate win condition. In a two-player game, one person losing and another player winning are linked together, whereas in multiplayer, they aren't. It's also not immediately clear what happens to the cards and effects belonging to the dead player. The exact rules governing losing the game in multiplayer are found in section 800.4 of the Comprehensive Rulebook. They read like this. When a player leaves the game, all objects owned by that player leave the game, and any effects which give that player control of any objects or players end. Then, if that player controlled any objects on the stack not represented by cards, those objects cease to exist. Then, if there are any objects still controlled by that player, those objects are exiled. At first glance, these rules seem to be pretty airtight. There's little issue with them in isolation. The problem comes from the fact that these rules apply to concessions as well. Your opponents and the natural state of the game are not the only forces influencing you to lose. You can manually choose to, and set these rules into motion at any time. This leads to several cases for abuse. Firstly, like we talked about before, concession can be done at instant speed. In some ways, it's even faster than that, because it cannot be responded to or affected by game actions. Heck, you don't even have to have priority to do it. This opens you up for a lot of cheesy plays. Let's say an opponent has a wide board state, and a Toski bearer of secrets. Meanwhile, you have 0 blockers and a punchable face. Toski has the ability to draw them a card for each creature that connects with a player directly. They move to combat and are incentivized to attack you with everything, which will let them draw the maximum number of cards. So they do that. This will not only kill you, but also ensure the Toski player draws so many cards that they will be virtually unstoppable for the other two players. If you're feeling especially vindictive, then it is possible to rob the Toski player of their earned reward. Since you may concede at any time, in response to attackers being declared, you can simply choose to lose the game. This way, you no longer exist when the damage step rolls around. This makes it so that the Toski player loses their triggers, draws nothing, and is left sitting there wide open to the other two players, without the resources they expected to have. Secondly, by conceding the game, all objects you own leave the game with you. This can act as removal for your own cards, freeing up someone else to win. Let's set the stage again, but this time you have a silent arbiter on the battlefield. He makes it so that only one creature can attack and block each combat. The leading player still has a huge board, but the arbiter is keeping it at bay. One of your other opponents informs you that they've just drawn a powerful card, maybe something like a Chroma's Will, that will let them take out the archenemy if they can just swing with all of their creatures. Unfortunately though, after looking at your hands, you realize nobody has a way to kill the arbiter. No problem. Before combat on that player's turn, you can opt to concede. This will remove the arbiter from play and allow that player to make full use of their alpha strike. Something else of note is that if you control someone else's cards because you cast them, those cards will be exiled. They are not owned by you, nor is there a constant effect giving you control of them, which means they default to the third of the original rules. They will be exiled when you lose. For your own objects, they're careful to use phrases like leaves the game and cease to exist, but exile is a rules term. This is supposed to function in order to put them back into a zone controlled by the owner, but it also means that this has interactions in gameplay. Ketramos the New Dawn is a creature that will draw its controller a card at the cost of 1 life whenever a card is exiled during their turn. Okay, the situation is this. You and players 2 and 3 are hopelessly behind player 4. The 3 of you have no cards in hand that will save you from this board state. But player 2 controls a Ketramos, and you had cast another player's creature earlier in the game. When it becomes player 2's turn, you now have an ace up your sleeve. You can concede the game, causing you to lose, which will exile the opponent's creature you cast. This will trigger Ketramos since a card on the battlefield was exiled during its controller's turn, giving player 2 an additional card and another chance to draw a board wipe. On the other hand, let's say the leading player is the one that controls a Ketramos. They're going to win on their turn, but only have a single point of life. Since Ketramos's draw and life loss is not a may clause, you may concede on their turn, trigger Ketramos's ability the same way, and kill them. All of these circumstances are technically legal as far as the game rules are concerned, but they're frowned upon by the community. This is because the players at the table are important for the viability of plays. On-hit triggers, life total swappers, turn controllers, and many more effects in this game rely on the fact that there is another player to use for value. If this player suddenly disappears, these effects all fall anemic. The core issue here is concessions are a heavily board state altering option that can be invoked at any time with higher priority than special actions and without using a single resource. These factors make it extremely difficult to play around the possibility of someone conceding. In one-on-one formats, these problems don't really matter. If the opponent concedes, then you don't need to get the value out of your combat damage triggers. You've already won. In multiplayer though, the game continues going, and concessions, like the examples given before, allow you to give remaining players advantages and disadvantages after you lose. In cEDH, the term for this would be a spite play. There is no way that conceding will increase your chances of winning the game. The only things spite plays accomplish are, well, just that. Spiting other players by invoking a rule that nobody can stop you from using. It may not break the rules of Magic, but it certainly spits in the face of the game's social contract. This can lead to friction with the other players. But on the other hand, we don't want to get rid of concessions. People need to be able to leave when they want, and saving time by scrapping doomed games can lead to a better game night as a whole. So, how can we concede in such a way that everyone is happy? There's a couple of smart ways to go about doing this. One is to concede together as a group. Instead of leaving on your own, when the odds are insurmountable, ask the table frankly if anyone has something to deal with the problem. Sometimes, people will tell you that they have answers, or will want to stick it out, but you'll be surprised how often people are comfortable with ending the game early in the interest of saving time. The group concession is especially helpful if the winning player's deck takes a lot of actions to finish a game out, like with a storm strategy. This method ties back into the reason concessions don't cause issues in 1v1 formats. The game is suddenly over once it happens. There's no room to screw up someone's play if it goes through. There is an issue with this tactic though, and that's the revealing of information. If everybody wants to concede except for one player, the archenemy now knows that the one holding out is likely to have a solution to the board state. This can put the underdog in a very bad situation if they're relying on going unnoticed until their next turn. But sometimes you really can't stay. You're running late to something and need to leave on your own even if the other players still believe they can win. A method that helps here is to concede at sorcery speed, waiting until it's your turn before you bow out. This has the benefit of rarely ever feeling like a blowout. Sure, the Toski player may miss out on some card draw triggers if you were the most open player, but they can restructure their turn around not having you to attack if you concede at sorcery speed. This method isn't perfect, and can still lead to putting players ahead and behind compared to where they were before you left. For instance, if someone were waiting to cast Insurrection on their turn to steal every creature, you leaving on your turn would still change how profitable this spell is. Still, it's a great method to alleviate some of the blowout potential of a concession. But at the end of the day, it's difficult to put firm rules on conceding. These methods each solve some issues and cause others. This is a soft science, and you'd be best served by discussing the idea with your group before pulling the ripcord on it mid-game. Regardless of how you do it though, you know what your intentions are. If it feels scummy in your heart, or you have a hesitance to go through with it, you probably already know the answer to whether or not you should. I want to make it clear that I believe the rules for losing and concession in Magic are well made. I don't think you could or should rework them to stop these edge cases. Players need to be able to walk away at any time and take the property with them. And there needs to be infrastructure to govern what happens to the game when someone leaves it. Hopefully, this helped you get an idea of what to and not to do while bowing out of a game. But if you have some other tips or methods you think make concessions smoother, please leave them in the comments. I'm sure there will be tons of other methods and home rules to try out down there. If you enjoyed the video's format, or just want to help me game the algorithm, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel. Sharing it around with your friends also really helps. I don't pay to advertise anywhere, so word of mouth is how I grow. If you want to talk about Magic with me directly, or get some Commander games in, I've got a Discord where we do just that. Finally, I've got a Blue Sky that I use to post about uploads and dunk on Wizards of the Coast. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.